Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Money, Life and Gags with Harry and Mark. How are you, Harry?
Mark, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very good, mate. Very good. I'm back from Bali and recovered from all my stupid injuries and raring to go.
Okay, all right. It's funny because when I usually get back from holidays, I suffer from jet lag. Have you had any of that?
No, we flew back within the time zone. So we left at about midday Bali time and we got back about 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m. Melbourne time. And so normally got back and we just went to bed and it was as per normal. So no one suffered from jet lag.
Can you sleep on the airplane?
We tried it last year because we went with the 10 p.m. flight coming home.
Yeah.
So you're flying in the middle of the night and you arrive here like 7 a.m. That was horrible. Like, no, I can't sleep on planes. So we said, nah, you come back, you're exhausted. You just got to go to bed when you get home. So that's not much fun. So no, this time around, we just left in normal time zones and it's worked out really well. And everyone's just rolling forward. Kids start school now. So off you go.
Off you go. Wonderful. Geez, I was clearing out my storeroom last night, and it's a store. Yeah, and I've got a storeroom downstairs, and look,
Good luck secrets you got in there, mate.
yeah, exactly. Look, I'm not a hoarder, but sometimes it's a little storeroom. That's usually where I've got all my travel bags, and the storeroom's it's just getting a little bit too messy now, and things are everywhere. So I started throwing things out, and funnily enough, I came across one of my diaries, a 1991 diary.
Do you keep a diary? I didn't even know you kept a diary.
Well, you know what I did. I kept all my diaries because what I used to do, funnily enough, this is when the internet wasn't around. Um, I used to it used to infuriate me when I used to start my week and look at my diary and it was all blank. What about him was still.
That was that.
Look, I've got to tell you, when you're starting off in life, you want to get going, but if you don't know what to do, then it's blank. I mean, everything's just.
Oh, the first day, the whole day is called hustle.
Did you do that from day dot?
From day dot. If there's no appointments, it's hustle time, and you got to go hustle. Go create shit.
Yeah, look, that took me, Mark. It's funny if you go back through my diaries. That took me 6 years to learn that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it took me from a young man. See, I got involved in the financial service industry from a young man. I mean, I don't want to use the excuse because I was young, because I think that's just crap.
Best balance these things, like when you're young, you're half partying, half career orientated. It's only when you get to our age that the partying, like you're too old, you got to go to bed by now.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you want to be involved in something where everything comes to your doorstep. I mean, that's what everyone wants. You want everything to come to your doorstep. In the financial services industry, I had to go and get clients. There's no magic to it. What I preferred is to go to my office on Monday, and there was a line of 50 people waiting outside to see. Didn't have
That's Nirvana, but I think you have to build up to that one.
Yeah, that didn't happen, and it was quite strange looking at my diary. I was still a young man. I wanted to quit.
Really?
Because
We're having those thoughts.
I think you get started, you're full of enthusiasm for about 3 to 4 weeks. You realize you're doing nothing. Your diary is blank. You're doing the fantasy la la land. Oh, don't worry, tomorrow it'll be right because there'll be 164 people waiting outside your office. You get there late. No one's waiting for you. The phones are ringing. Your door is closed because you're too embarrassed because everyone's just busy doing stuff, and I was doing nothing.
Right.
No,
Bit humbling, isn't it?
yeah, no, it is. It is. And look, I think a lot of people go through this, whether they're young or middle aged or they're at the end of their career. Nothing's going to happen if you don't make it happen. So my change came. We had then called managers looking after us, even though we were self-employed. We had managers, and I was
Under
extremely.
license or something, was it? Is that
Yeah. So I was extremely fortunate. I the bloke that was looking after us was a guy by the name of Robin Daubeny. I'm not too sure if you know the name,
No.
Robin Daubeny. He was very successful in the financial services industry, was a public speaker, went out and spoke to AFL clubs, managed sports people, people from the Olympic Games, all that sort of stuff. His policy was that his door was always open. That was his policy. Prior from me going to his doorstep, I just wanted to quit. I really wanted to quit. And
How far into your starting was that thought process for you? Is that weeks or months, or what was the timeline there?
Mark, this was my 3rd year.
Oh, so you'd given it a decent crack, and it wasn't like just flippant.
Yeah, and it was I've been talked to many times within that 3-year period, like, lift your game because you're at the door. So it's not as if I haven't been talked to, but, I was just in awe of people around me because usually when you're involved in an industry, you really look up to people who are actually doing it. Yeah, they're coming into the offices with the fancy cars, the nice suits, the tie, all that sort of stuff. Um, I don't know. I mean, they were just busy and I couldn't work out how in the hell were they doing it. So I used to use the excuse that, "Oh, it's because I'm young." But then that excuse was taken away from me because there was a young girl in my office. I think she was maybe a year or 2 years older than me, and she was killing it.
Right.
And she was just killing it. And I used the excuse, "Oh, look, I know why she's killing it because her parents are wealthy and her parents is just feeding her with all the referrals." Well, that's bullshit. That's just an excuse to make me happy. You know,
Yeah,
if not,
you were justifying your lack of performance by you doing what other people do it.
I couldn't
No.
so I couldn't work out, like, what is it that these people do, to become successful? Technically, my knowledge was actually quite okay because it had to be. I was doing nothing in the office but looking at a bloody, computer, and trying to work out how things work. So I didn't need, anyone to tell me how things work. I mean, I was pretty good at my stuff. So, going to Robin Daubeny's, office, and he knew. He knew I just had enough, and, I sat down thinking very much that he was gonna close his door. He didn't. He had that American, I mean, he was an Aussie guy, but he had that American style of, managing, and that is his door was always open, and I was too embarrassed, or I didn't want people to hear, what was gonna come out of my mouth. So I actually got up and closed the door, and, he said, "No, don't close the door." So that was embarrassing because I didn't know who was mucking around on the outside listening to the conversation. In a nutshell, he knew exactly what I was going through, and he only gave me one instruction. He said to me, "Just do 10 appointments per week." And I was trying to tell him, "Mate, I can't get to 2. How am I gonna get to 10?" And then he said to me, "Make 10 calls per day." Now, the reality is, when he forced me to, answer him how many calls I was making per day, it was between 0 and 1.
So it's a bit hard to get any appointments if you're not making the calls, right?
Spot on, because I thought 50 people were gonna wait outside of my office every single day. My journey got started, and, was I making 10 calls per day? No, no. Was I doing about 4 to 5? Yep, yep. Was I
What
doing
stopped
10?
you going to 10, based on his advice? What stopped you?
I was just giving up because of, rejection.
Right.
I mean,
And these were just cold calling, right? They weren't gig you shouldn't leave, something like that.
Mark, we're talking the early 90s now, right?
It's different world.
Uh,
Yeah, different.
yeah, in the early 90s. In fact, it was, yeah, so the early 90s, it was just cold calling. And, however, I used to do between 2 and 3 appointments per week. So my results were a little bit better, not a lot better, but far better than the previous 12 months. And silly me, I couldn't
So
work.
you were making, just to do the numbers, you were doing 4 to 5 calls a day, which translated to 3 to 4 appointments a week.
Yes.
And And what was the conversion of those 3 to 4 appointments becoming clients on average?
Usually 1 out of the 3 or 4.
Right, okay, so about 25% roughly.
Yeah, yeah. But silly me, I didn't go on with the phone calls to make those stats look better. So 6 months ago,
You were your own worst enemy, huh?
100%.
Yeah.
And I used to go yeah, and I used to go home and, read the motivational books, the rah, 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 and that only works if you're gonna put action behind it. If you're not gonna put in the action behind it, it doesn't matter which world you live in, nothing's gonna happen.
And this is all because you thought, "I put a shingle out and everyone's gonna come."
Well, that's what I wanted, yeah.
Yeah, which was a misconception.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah,
that was
100.
the block for you.
Yeah, and I also found out that in the financial services industry back in the early 90s, it probably exists today as well. I don't know what the numbers are, but out of every 10 people entering the industry, 8 are gonna go out the door. I mean, that was just a fact, and, I
Well, with all the changes in, licensing and your education requirements and whatnot, a lot of the old school, probably our age and above, a lot of them have been cleaned out because, they're more old school in the way they gave advice. They're doing statements of advice and doing all the regulatory stuff, the compliance stuff, all that. For one client, there's a lot of work now, and
Yes.
you've got to use technology, and a lot of them are not tech savvy. There's a lot of them have been rooted out of the industry.
That's because of not wanting to adapt.
Yeah, and not meet all the education requirements because the bar's gone up on how what qualification do you need to give advice now? Trying to get wrong capable.
Yes, but prior to adapting to the technology, nothing has changed from 30 years ago, and that is going and finding clients. That hasn't changed.
Mm.
That has
And huge changes. You can use social media now to attract clients. You don't have to do everything face to face. You can build a brand online, which I've seen financial planners do. They will come in that way. But that's the only thing that's changed. But the fundamentals of hustling hasn't changed.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in my office, maybe 4 or 5 months into it, just making the 3 or 4 phone calls a day. My door's still closed because I'm there for 8 hours, but I'm only working for about 15 minutes. I mean, you know how it goes.
What were you doing for the rest of the time? Playing Tetris or something?
No, well, you know what? Bloody hell, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just staring. I was doing nothing. I mean, I was just in no man's land. And Robin just opens my door. And he said to me, when you decide to get to make 10 calls a day, we can review your performance. It's almost as if he knew that I was only doing 2 or 3 or 4 phone calls per day. So I was really embarrassed. So I got up and left. I went home. And again, I'm about to quit. I'm actually about to quit. So I've gone home and I've said, my goodness, this man has been so patient with me. I mean, I'm hanging in there, right? So I haven't had that other talk where if you don't lift up your socks, you need to leave, because I was probably just doing enough just to hang in there. So the following day, when I went to his office, I'm about to quit, and I said, "You know what, Robin? I'm going to make 10 calls." And he goes to me, "Great, off you go." So when I went into my office, I made 10 calls, but I only got 1 appointment. So that was a disaster. And I'm thinking, what's the point of making 10 calls or getting 1 appointment when the previous day I made 2 and I got 1 appointment? I mean, it just wasn't adding up, at the back of my head. I think this is what happens, Mark, when you're self-employed. It's a lonely world. And if you're not strong enough just to hang in there, you're going to bomb out. You're going to completely bomb out. So, I've decided to take, the second action, and that is up my phone calls to go from 10 to 20. And I hate it. I hated it.
Is that because the cold calling exercise,
Yeah.
you hated that
I hated the
element?
rejection. Yeah, I hated the rejection. Hi, this is Harry Petropoulos from blah, 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 blah. And, that they used to hang up or you say you get lost and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Feels a little,
Really?
yeah, you know what it's like. You got to throw enough mud on the wall until something sticks.
It's a numbers game, mate.
It is. It is. So on one particular week, I said, you know what? I'm going to make 100 calls. That's 20 calls every day for 5 days. And you know what? I actually got to 9 appointments, not 10, 9. Well, you know what? That was my biggest week.
Wow.
Comparing it to the past. So I've got money coming in. And this money now gets me now really enthusiastic. Like I'm bubbling with enthusiasm, like I'm driving a Porsche next week, right? All that sort of stuff.
No, don't get ahead of yourself, will you?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, the money wasn't great, but it was far better than what I was doing the previous 3 years.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why I picked up my diary yesterday and I didn't throw it out. If you saw my diary from about May 91 to about November, I had no blank spaces. 0.
So the hustling
Yeah.
paid off at that period.
So when we started this episode, you mentioned about hustling. That's all I did. It's hustling. And I quickly understood all the people around me in my office that came in with the nice cars, with the nice shirts, thinking that they were just gliding. Bullshit. They were running 1,000 miles per hour on the inside. They were doing exactly what I was doing, but at a far bigger degree. So that clicked for me. And I still hated it. I still hated the cold calling. All right.
How long do you think it took you from the period of where you had to cold call and then build up that client base to a level where the cold calling really reduced because your word of mouth of your service that you provide your clients branched out and you had incoming people just calling you rather than, Jim told me to give you a call and Jack told me to give you a call and Lisa told me to give you a call and all that. How long did that take? Because I would imagine in your world at some point that occurred.
That's a great question. Don't fall off your chair. 7 years.
It took you 7 years to get to that.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have put that. I would have thought it'd be maybe around 3 or something, but 7, that's a decent journey.
It took me 7 years to get to that. And I was about 30, 31. And
Yep.
funnily enough, I moved from that existing office because another person in the financial services industry, he saw something in me, which I couldn't see. Not that we were in business together. He just wanted someone younger in his office. So at that time, I'm 30. He's in his 50s. And Mark, I was just fortunate that for the following 2 to 3 years, I was in awe of this guy because even though we had separate offices, we were separated by glass. So I could see what he was doing. And let me tell you, he worked those phones like a madman. So he was averaging, I'll never forget this, he was averaging between 6 and 7 appointments per day.
And so it's a long day, isn't it? Because every appointment would go, what, half an hour to an hour?
Correct. So he would be in the office at 7 and he would finish at 7 because that's what he wanted to do. Whilst he was doing 6 and 7 appointments per day, I was averaging those 6 to 7 appointments per week. But I learned from this guy. And once he decided to move to Queensland, I was by myself again. I mean, you're always by yourself when you're self-employed. But then because I'd done all that hustling for 7 years, then the referrals started to come in. And as the referrals started to come in, I thought, you know what? The worst thing that I can do is stop hustling because the referrals were coming in. So I had 2 forces working for me and I kept moving and I kept moving. So I think what I'm trying to say to everyone that's listening to this pod, no matter what you do, some people take a short period of time to achieve success, or some people take a long time to achieve success. Whatever the case, you're still going to be on top of the mountain once you get there. It's all got to do with your mindset, with your attitude, and are you prepared to go through crap? Because if you're not prepared to go through crap, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. You got to stay the course. As long as that path has, riches at the end of it, and that's a trick. You always have to, inventors, developers, all those sort of people. Sometimes they're chasing dreams that no one gives a shit about. So you got to be careful you're not in that world. But majority of things, if you stay the course and you're disciplined and you're relentless and you hustle, luck, it's amazing. The harder you work, the luckier you get in business, which applies to a lot of elements of life. And starting up especially when you're young, because you don't have a network generally when you're young.
You have nothing.
The fact it took you 7 years, that's commendable that you had a number of, potential white flag moments where I give up,
Yeah.
but you stuck through and then you came out the other end and became really successful. So that's, kudos to you.
I mean, I owe my success to Robin Dorbin. He passed away, I think, recently. Um, but
And
yes,
second guy as well,
yeah, the second guy's passed away too.
but
I mean,
it was all
Robin,
once and
yeah. So the first guy didn't teach me anything about technical knowledge in the financial services industry because I was stuck in the office for 8 hours. So that's all I could do. But in his world, it's see the people. The second guy was all about me viewing what he was doing on a daily basis. So there's no magic to it. You just got to stick at it. I mean, I'm not too sure what your journey, in fact, what was your journey as a young man? Did you have similar struggles to myself or did you find it easier?
No, I had a funny upbringing in the professional world. So I started life as an accountant, and I was probably Australia's worst accountant. I hated it and was not very good at it. But it was a passport to get into the world that I wanted. And so when I first entered the workforce, I started as an accountant and a financial controller, and because I was crap at it, I only lasted jobs for like maybe 18 months because it generally took that long for an employer to work out I was no good. And so I would leave before they had to make any calls on me, so that way.
But you actually, yes, that, did you out people?
Absolutely, yeah. But the one thing I'm good at is percepting when my crap becomes exposed, right?
Yeah.
I've got a good perception for that, and so I would just jump jobs all the time. And but the problem with that in living in the world of accountancy, if you're going for another job, you have to go a step up, because if you're going sideways or down, everyone says, "What are you doing?" What, like, looks back. And so in the early days, I was building this career in accountancy, which I never wanted, going up and up and up and up, and then the pressure got a lot because I'm in roles that no way I was qualified, mentally and knowledge wise. I was good at managing the teams and the people, but not the technical side of things because like I didn't really go to uni properly. I was playing cards in uni when I was supposed to be in class. So
Did you win in card?
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Good. Good. Well done. At least we got there.
Uni was good for that, and I got my bachelor of business for it at the end of it. But was I an expert in accounting? No, I was not. I didn't get the knowledge that you need, and so I got to a point where I had to make a change. Like, how far am I going to go? Am I going to become a CFO of a listed company and still not know what the hell I'm doing? Um, and so I just took it upon myself to make a change. At that time, I don't know if you remember a number of pods ago, I told you I was also a day trader.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I was day trading while I was employed to be an accountant.
Cheers.
And so that's why it was a recipe for disaster. Um, and so through the day trading network that I was involved with and whatnot, I met Gary Kroll, who you know, and so that was meeting Gary was the sort of the opening for me to pivot my career. I always wanted to get into listed world, playing micro caps, all that sort of stuff, and that enabled me to switch out of accounting, and I got involved in stockbroking. And so Gary at the time was running a business called Deacon Financial Services Group. They bought a stockbroking firm, so he helped me get into that, and then that transformed my career. So like I was no longer in the world of accountancy and, faking and baking, I was in my playground, getting involved with companies and investors and so forth. I didn't last too long in the stockbroking part because what I've quickly realized is to make money in broking, you basically got to keep making recommendations for them to buy something and sell something else to fund that buy and so forth. So you're making money on the transaction commission. And that's in sync well with me because why am I going to make somebody sell a company where they should be holding it? So, but if they don't sell it, I don't eat. So it's sort of counterproductive to the advice I wanted to give them to me eating. And so I got out of the actual transaction side of stockbroking and got involved in the corporate advisory side. And then that led to me getting involved with Paragon Cam and becoming an executive there. So my whole career changed on the back of that. And so it's not the traditional way how you get involved in listed companies and so forth, but that was the eclectic way I went about it, which was more circumstantial rather than by design.
I'm just wondering, Mark, um, I don't think there is a traditional way to getting into any sort of industry. I think it doesn't happen by chance. You've got to do something about it. Um, I've always maintained the approach, whatever you want to do, don't keep it a secret. Let people know. That doesn't mean that they're going to call you tomorrow morning because they know of someone who knows of someone that's going to open a door for you. But in fact, I always say to myself, and then I say to other people, whatever you want to do, don't keep it a secret, because you don't know what's around the corner. The
I agree. Absolutely. And doesn't mean you have to like oversell yourself, but it's got to be known. It's got to be known. So like if you're after, growth in your business, mingle with people who also, I think we've mentioned in previous pods how you join these professional groups, for example. And so they're not the same business as yours, but they're other businesses. But you join those groups because you share networks, you share ideas, you share concepts. That's an example of let it be known what you want to do. You wouldn't join those groups just for no objective. You're joining those groups for development. Same in the business world. Like if you want to play in listed world, go play with people or get associated with people in listed world, which is what I did. And it's amazing how doors open. And then once they're open, just grab. And so I grabbed it and I was relentless in those early days. And I didn't care. I didn't let anybody stop me with that. So I've got so many people say you can't do this and you can't do that. And
Yeah, I've had that as well. Yeah.
prove them all wrong. I don't really care for opinions. I don't have mentors. I don't have, Yodas in my life. I'm, just basically a bit of a lone wolf. If I have a belief in something, I'll just go for it.
You just go and do it. I guess if I have one regret when I was a young man, I mean, I know that now when I look back, um, I'd I should have made more of an effort to hang around positive people. I think going back, I was hanging around with bloody negativity. I mean, I don't know anyone that's negative that's become successful. I actually don't, Mark.
Only batteries, mate. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. So my message to everyone is, and it's hard. Is it hard to do this? Well, yes, it is, because if you're hanging around a group of people and you don't even know the effect that they have on your mindset. I mean, you have to be strong. I'm not saying you have to ignore people, but if you're gonna hang around negativity, like it or not, it's gonna affect your mindset. So one should make a determined effort to hang around more positive people, because I mean, this stuff works. The more you hang around with people that are positive and have a good outlook in life, the chances are that you're going to become successful as well.
I couldn't agree more. There's two things you should do: surround yourself with confident people,
Yep.
and you're surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you in whatever fields they're involved with.
Yeah.
They don't have to be smarter than you in the areas your expertise, but they've got to be smarter than you in other areas. And so if you combine those two things, you'll succeed. But if you hang around dead weight, if you hang around people that everything's chicken little, and everything there, yeah, I don't believe in the word can't. I only believe in the word will or won't. So will you
Mm.
or won't you? Not you can't,
Yeah.
because there's no
Yeah.
can't.
That's a
So
great attitude.
most things in life, it's your attitude that determines if you will or you won't, not the environment. Now, it all relative, like, am I going to become Prime Minister of Australia? No. So, I'm not going to go for something like that because I
Mm.
have no interest in that. But you've got to keep it real, but that doesn't mean you can't be ambitious.
Yes, yeah. ambition is a strange word. It's one that everyone understands it, but in my journey, I think everyone starts off with ambition. It's a fine line, the ones who decide to back it up with action, even though they don't wanna go through the crap. Mm, I've been around for a long time, especially in the financial services industry, and, I understand that the more you can I think what I'm trying to say is that no matter it doesn't have to be financial services, it could be accounting, you could be a CEO, it could be anything. The more crap that you know how to handle doesn't mean that you're gonna be successful at every single point in time, but the more stuff that you can handle, chances are at the other end, you will achieve success. There's no question in my mind about what I'm saying now because
I
I've
agree.
tac yeah, I've tackled a couple of different things and, it always comes down, to one thing, and that is, I always say to my kids, I say to myself, "Keep moving," because if you stay stagnant, guess what's gonna happen? You stay stagnant.
Yeah. I often use the analogy of a garden. Yeah, and so if your professional life, if you treat it like a garden, if you don't do anything in that garden, what grows? Weeds. You don't grow anything of value, you just grow weeds.
Mm.
But if you nurture that dirt and water it and trim it and cultivate it and so forth, you can grow trees, you can grow whatever you want out of it, and you got a full life coming through on that. Careers are no different. So if you just sit here waiting for everything to happen, nothing happens because you're not hustling. You're not creating anything. If you think you're God's gift to the world and everything should land on your doorstep, it's probably 1 in 10 million that happens to
Yeah, I agree.
somewhere, right? But the rest of it, you gotta make it happen. And so the same way you make your garden happen, make your career happen, make your life happen. Whatever aspect of life you're talking about, treat it like a garden.
Yeah, yeah, look, I totally agree. And you know what the, hypocrisy is? When you go to school or education, they don't teach you how to hustle. Don't you
Do
find
it.
this weird?
Well, that's why I don't value education a huge amount. But you ain't
Yeah. Yeah, but the things that, you should learn in life, which are paramount to your success, it doesn't matter what you do. Um, it wasn't only too recently that I was speaking to a doctor, young doctor, who wants to open up his own practice, and, you know what I said to him? "You're no different to where I was 30 years ago. You need to go get patients. You need clients." Just
yeah,
because he's a doctor, guess what? He needs to hustle.
it does. Can't just put a shingle up.
No, it's just it's really just not gonna, happen. So and I'm beginning to understand, that 80-20 rule where 20% of the people do 80% of the work and 80% of the people only earn 20% of the income. I actually it's taken a long time, but I actually understand the difference. It's not because one's smarter or one's taller or one's dumber. Um, it's just that one decided to hustle and, they've made it happen.
Yeah, it's a good point you make because education is only a certain element of success. But how many people have you and I come across in our travels? Successful people don't have university degrees, don't have MBAs, don't have this, don't have that. They come from the street, from school of hard knocks, right? But they've got a mindset. They've got a winner's mindset. They go for it and they target these things without fear. Whereas I'm of the belief when you know too much, when you're overeducated,
Good
it
night.
builds fear.
Yeah,
It
it does.
builds fear. And so you look at bankers, for example, right? They're not the most educated of people, but they've got an education level, and then they get into the banking system and they learn about credit and credit risk. And so there's a lot of education within the banking system. How many of them will leave the banking system and become entrepreneurs? Hardly any of them because they know too much. They know all the downside, and that scares the leg over. Sometimes that level, just a nice balance of naivety, because you don't know all that downside, lets you be brave and target whatever you want to target, and don't discount that. I guess is to viewers here. Be brave.
Do you think, Mark, people, depending on their upbringing, whether or not a component of their fear comes from their upbringing? I mean, I come from a household where my parents immigrated to the country in the 60s, and they wanted the safe passage. They wanted no risk, which I understand why. In fact,
Yeah. Well, they
I
took
think
the risk.
yeah. I totally agree with that. So someone starting off, no matter what industry they're involved with, what are the couple of things that you can point out, or you think you should point out, how one should conquer fear, no matter their background?
So it's interesting point you made about upbringing. So that banker experience I just spoke about, that was my mum. So my mum was a 30, 40-year banker with NAB in business banking, and she learnt a lot. She was well educated in that space, and so she could never go into a business for herself because she understood all the risks of every business that she had as clients and so forth. A lot of them were successful, but that fear was a hurdle for her. Whereas I didn't inherit any of that. And, and I'm more at the other spectrums, like, yeah, I love risk. I love rolling the dice and seeing what happens. And I'm one of those people that I'll risk everything to have a crack, which is probably not ideal, but that's just my nature. So sometimes it's not about the upbringing. It's just about your mindset and what your dreams are and how you chase things. But if you do have fear, I don't really know because I've never been fearful myself. So I'm not really sure how I would advise someone that is fearful. Um, Other than you got to face it, understand and face that fear, and then quickly work out, can you overcome that fear? Because you don't want to spend 20 years of your life trying to grow a business or a career with fear, because it's not good for your mental health if you're in that environment. And so you either go up or you go sideways to a world that doesn't have fear associated with it. So you can live a good life and a fruitful life. Everyone gets to achieve greatness and to achieve great wealth, and yeah, because they're not built that way. And it's coming to terms with, can I overcome the fear? So if you know you're fearful, then do something about it if you want to, or just accept that and put yourself in an environment where that fear doesn't really play a role.
And do you believe that when someone takes on a new project, it's completely foreign to them? I've done a couple of these. Um,
Yeah.
some have yielded success, some haven't yielded success, not because of fear, because of certain events that have taken place. It's irrelevant what those events are, but there's no doubt about in my mind. As I've gone through my journey, I find, because I've encountered some failures, and my mindset has always emotionally drained me. It's not something that you can get over within 24 hours. But my answer to that is, I got to jump back on that train and keep moving. I would assume, Mark,
Yeah.
I would assume that for someone who wants to take an additional step to take on a project, I can almost guarantee that the majority of them who face their first failure usually bomb out and won't get back on that train and keep moving.
I think you're right, because most people treat failure as a failure, where successful people treat failure as a learning.
Yes.
And so if you have the mentality, okay, I'll give it a crack. What are my learnings from that? So if I have another crack, what are my key learnings that I take away from there? So the key to growing and developing is making mistakes is okay, because we all make mistakes. What's
No doubt.
ridiculous if you make the same mistake. So you've not learnt a thing if you continually make the same mistake. That you should not be an entrepreneur if you keep making the same mistakes, because you're not learning. But if you take away the learnings and drop the shit that was no good, take the stuff that was good and work on that and make sure the stuff you dropped you never repeat, then you move forward. And most entrepreneurs will probably tell you stories of their first and second projects. They were failing.
Yeah, I
It's
agree
their
with that. Yeah.
fourth and their fifth where they really started succeeding. And not everyone has to be an entrepreneur. It can just be in your career or your even a small business is just as rewarding as being a high flyer, because you build a nice small business that fulfills all your requirements, feeds your family, all that stuff, and builds a nice retirement nest egg for yourself. That's fantastic too.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
you got to learn from your failures and not make those same mistakes. But
I totally
interesting topic we've spoken about today.
very interesting, Mark, all because I looked at my 1991 diary.
Yeah, I'd love to see your handwriting. It was a crap back. Oh,
Mate, pretty shocking, but let me tell you, and I'm glad that I opened up the diary because it brought back some thoughts. And look, I think that everyone has got a story to tell, but the message is no matter where you are in life, you just got to keep moving.
I agree. There's a saying I use. You always have to be relentless in the pursuit of excellence.
Awesome.
And that's something I tell myself all the time. So we can close off on that statement.
We certainly can. Cheers, mate, and looking forward to the next episode.
Likewise. Take care, everybody. Bye.